Well, it is that time. Another set has come and gone and almost gone. That is Eevee Grove here in Pokemon Pocket, and I want to kind of give my final verdict and final thoughts on this set. It's interesting because these sets are going incredibly fast, right? We have a new one coming out real quick. They're going as fast as those Vin Diesel movies, The Chronicles of Riddick, and now I want to give my thoughts on Eevee Grove. This has been an interesting set because I do think a few important things have come out of it. One very important card, and some sets are going to feel like that. One card that just sticks around maybe forever, depending on how new cards react to it, right? And then other things that I think are just going to kind of fade away pretty quickly. So let's get into it. Eevee Grove. I would love to hear from you. How was the season for you? How are the new cards for you? For me, I thought Sylveon was going to be pretty amazing, and while we'll get to our tier list of where we placed everything and my final thoughts later, Sylveon is really amazing. Meta-defining. The ability to go through your entire deck basically in a couple turns because of Sylveon EX, that is incredibly good. This set has a lot of Eevees, but unfortunately not a lot of Eevees that I think are super meta relevant. So we have Umbreon, Glaceon, Vaporeon, Jolteon has its moments. You've got kind of new Leafeon that doesn't really have as many moments, unfortunately. It really does feel like a lot of the Eevee Grove is not super impactful. However, Sylveon EX and Flareon EX are both really solid cards, respectively. Very different, obviously. Sylveon is a guarantee almost that you're going to pull every single card in your deck, while Flareon, on the other hand, is an extremely powerful fire card that allows you to generate energy from your discard pile, which just sets up a lot of amazing plays. We've seen some really cool decks in this meta. I want to shout out like that Leafeon Flareon deck that came out pretty early on. That's such an exciting, fun, weird combination that popped up in this meta. And we've also seen sort of Sylveon become the bacon of this set, right? It is thrown into everything. You've got Sylveon Greninja, and you've got Sylveon Charizard, and can I interest you in some Sylveon Galeo? It feels like Sylveon has just become that card that is in everything. Very similar to Rare Candy, but obviously completely different in how it functions. It's just a card that makes your decks way more consistent, so you see it added to everything. I do wonder, as we look to the future, what is going to come out. I have a feeling that at some point we are going to have something, whether it's stadiums or a Pokemon, that negates abilities that your opponent has. Not every Pokemon I'm talking about, like Sylveon, not every Pokemon is just an ability that does something, right? But I do think more and more we're going to need something that is shutting down some of this stuff, because otherwise there are certain cards that are just not leaving the meta anytime soon. Of course, this meta still saw some really powerful stuff from Extra Dimensional Crisis. Buzzwole's still doing well, Silvally is doing well, and probably will be maybe forever. I mean, it's just so unbelievably strong. And again, a lot of older meta staples just coming back with Sylveon added into it. So let's hop into my tier list of my initial impressions. I'm going to kind of give you what that looked like and what I think now that we're at the end of this set. And of course, we should be hearing news on the new set very, very soon. I'm guessing for the Pokemon Presents, which I will be live for, so I hope to see you there. Okay, so what you're looking at is the tier list I made just a couple days into Eevee Grove. I like doing this at the start of the season. Someone gave me this idea a while back, like do the tier list right away at the start of the season and then come back to it at the end and kind of see what you got right, what you got wrong. So let's go through it right here. Taking a look at our tiers, we have our God tier where we put one Pokemon card, the thing that we think is going to be best. We're not freaking Norse around here. Only one card in the God tier. We have our S tier, really powerful cards here. A tier, extremely strong cards, but maybe just a shade of, below S. Oftentimes I feel like A tier cards are very, very good, but maybe more specific. B tier, still got the B tier. These are cards that I think are fine. And a lot of these I was like, I don't know, like maybe good, maybe bad. We have our Clodsire tier. These are cards that I wish was better. And, you know, unfortunately, I don't think they're going to get a lot of play. We have our Dragonite tier, a tier named after Dragonite when Dragonite was bad. Dragonite's actually all right now, but we have the D tier still as the Dragonite tier. And then the Looker tier, a tier for cards that are absolutely awful and fully terrible and you'd never use them. Okay, so let's begin. You know what? Let's start with our Looker tier right here. I don't think anything really falls into the Looker tier, and I mean that for Penny also. Penny is fine. It's actually, look, it's not great, but it's fine. It's so much better than Looker. It's not completely useless. Every once in a while, you will pull a Professors with it. Should you put it in your deck? No, but there are a lot of cards you shouldn't put in your deck, right? I'm going to keep Penny in our Dragonite tier here. Almost useless and way too random, but actually kind of fun. Leftovers. I think Leftovers has some very specific use cases and might get a little better. Like, it's pretty good in Solgaleo, right? It completely negates the damage Solgaleo would do to itself when it attacks, giving it that extra little buffer to get away from something like Stoke Charizard. So there are definitely some use cases for Leftovers. I'm going to move it to my C tier. I think I was a little more down on Leftovers maybe than I needed to be, but I also still don't think it's an amazing card. It's just really, really specific. There are other cards in here that I don't even really know what to say about, like Togedemaru, Liepard, Purloin, Mineshaw, Whiscash. These are all useless cards. Everything in the Dragonite tier is pretty useless. Maybe Appleton's a little closer to C tier, which is basically bad. The interesting thing in the meta for Pocket is there are really good cards, and then there are cards you'd never use. So I don't really know what to make of that. It does feel like the chasm between very usable and not usable is wide with some of this. I think all of this can stay in the D tier. I don't think any of it's really playable or usable at all. Ambipom, same thing. It's essentially nothing. I'm going to move it down to our D tier. The Dratini, and then Dragonite. I have Dragonite in my B tier. That's too kind. It's definitely a C tier card at best. Here's the honest thing is, Dragonite, Snorlax, Primarina are all not very good. Primarina is maybe the best of the bunch, maybe, but it's also not very good. I'll talk about it specifically here in a moment, but let's talk about Dragonite. I said this at the start of the set. There were people who were geeking out about the fossil tech. Can you believe the tech? It's not very good. It just isn't very good. It requires multicolor energy, and it's only doing damage to that front target. It's a good amount of damage. It's just not. It's not enough. It takes too long to set up. You can get tripped up by the energy requirement. The damage isn't like. There are some cards that do less damage, but you don't always need to do 180 damage for something to be valuable, right? It is cool that this is basically a one-shot into the entire roster, but I just don't think it's that relevant of an EX card. Unfortunately, there are cards that are really, really good. Like, when you look at the difference between this and Solgaleo, and I often use Solgaleo because Solgaleo is very fast. And I think the reason I bring up Solgaleo a lot is because you do have to recognize, okay, Dragonite's going to do considerable damage to Solgaleo, but Solgaleo is going to get on an entire turn earlier, energy-wise. It is also going to move into the active spot for free and has also a very considerable HP pool. So the two brawling, like Dragonite will be able to kind of murk it in one big hit, right? But in general, like you look at a card like that, okay, so Solgaleo is a lot faster. Then you look at a card like Stoke Charizard. Stoke Charizard is faster in that it generates its own energy. So you don't brick like you can with Dragonite, and both Solgaleo and Char don't make you stop attacking, so you have to use some tech like the fossil tech or bring it back to the bench somehow. It's just okay, so now you've got two meta cards that are just a lot happier than this one. Or you've got something like Giratina, generates its own energy. Yes, it hits for way less damage, but it's while you're setting up, it's setting up its own energy. So on and on and on, you'll find EX cards that are just frankly better than this, even though they're not doing as much damage. Now we can talk about Snorlax EX. We might as well. I'm just going to move it right over here next to Dragonite. Or you know what? Maybe I'll just move these guys up here because it's kind of prettier to have our EXs near the front. Snorlax EX, also pretty bad. I think worse than Berry Snorlax. I think C tier for both of these cards is probably generous. I think they're both not great. Snorlax requires 4 colorless to do not enough damage. And the leftovers it has really only works into a deck that's trying to chip damage at you. And that's not a lot of what's going on in the meta. The meta is maybe something chipping at you like Water Shuriken or maybe a Crobat or something, right? and then you are doing enough damage to KO this in one hit. If you don't KO it in one hit, you are going to get it in two. So the leftovers really doesn't help that much. It's not that good of a wall. You compare it with Ilima, which is kind of cool at times, but now you need multiple cards just for this to be a wall. I mean, you could wall it with something else, or you could just wall it with that other Snorlax and actually have the ability to fight. So I think Snorlax EX, pretty bad. They're both bad. D tier is probably more fair, but it's not like you can't win ever with these decks. And then we have Primarina. Before I get to some of these other cards, we have Primarina EX that I'm also going to move down to the C tier. It's maybe... I actually don't even think it's the best Water EX we have. I was thinking that near the start of the set. I think the best Water EX we have is maybe Crabominable, honestly. I'm not even kidding. Maybe Crab or Palkia, like that combination together. It just doesn't do enough damage. I'm sorry, Primarina does not do enough damage. 40, then 80, then 100. It's not enough. It's cool that this has multiple attacks. It's cool that it heals itself. Water in general is in a rough spot, I think, because of Misty. The early Misty design put a lot of water cards in a rough spot because they all require so much energy. 3 energy to do 100 damage just isn't cutting it. It doesn't. How helps this a little bit, right? So you can actually maybe pick up some KOs that otherwise you wouldn't. But in general, I just don't think it's doing enough damage. You also are not healing yourself enough to be super relevant. So while I'm always excited about new EX cards and I want to make fun decks with them, and I think maybe I like our Dragonite deck that we made the most out of these 3, I just think, unfortunately, all 3 of these are not good EX cards. Yeah, unfortunate, but I do think they're not great. Zarina, I'm going to keep in C tier. It's very cheesy. Maybe a little better than D, but very cheesy. Glaceon, I think, is useless. Putting it down in our Dragonite tier. Mimikyu, I think, is useless. Putting it down in our Dragonite tier. Umbreon, I'm kind of surprised. Umbreon requires a specific meta. We don't have that meta. Umbreon is useless right now, I think. Borderline. You can make decks with it. You know what I'm saying? It's not Looker tier, but it's like, you never get value out of Umbreon right now. Melmetal is, you know, not relevant. I think the Voltic kind of combination is sort of cool with Galvantula. They're not great. The dragons aren't great. Let's move up to our B tier here. Flareon, not as relevant as I was thinking it would be. I'm going to move it down to our C tier. It's fine, but it kind of hangs out with some of these other... It's like a little better than some of these other EVs. Torkoal, I actually think is fine. Also, I think it's like kind of a C tier card. You're using it if you don't have a better option, basically, which is probably Turtonator, right? In that sort of role. New Leafeon, not very good. Unfortunately, it just doesn't do enough damage. Other Leafeons are more relevant, and yeah, you know, you got to stack a lot of energy on it, so you kind of build it with superior. Fun decks, but not super great. This might be my most controversial take of the whole tier list. I think the Sweets Relay deck is actually fine. I'm not moving it up. It's not an A tier deck, but it's actually fine. Like, I was doing my free-to-play account, which we didn't give enough time to hit Masters with, unfortunately. But we had like a 75% win rate with Sweets Relay. It's fine. It's not broken. It's not the most meta thing. It's actually a really easy to build, decent deck, which I think is pretty cool. Jolteon I'd also keep in the B tier here. Jolteon's pretty decent. 60 is a lot of damage, and you can pair this with things like Silvally or Ikorio, and you could have some decent decks with it. A single energy to do 60 in some surprising ways. It's actually solid damage with decent HP. Not the best, but you know, when you have Eevee in your deck, you can also pair it with Sylveon and stuff like that. So I'm going to keep it B. I think it's pretty solid. Moving up to our A tier, we have our Flareon EX, and I'm actually going to move up to our S tier. Outside of Sylveon, which is, I mean, spoiler alert, staying in our God tier. Outside of Sylveon, it's the best EX in the set, clearly. It's so good. The ability to generate fire energy is incredible, and 130 damage is very sizable considering you only need a single energy on this for it to be, you know, making its way to the active spot, and then one in your discard. But a single energy on this to be a threat next turn. Pretty powerful. Let's see. Espeon, I think I overvalued Espeon. I think there are some okay decks with it. It's probably closer to C tier, maybe B. I think I overvalued how good Espeon would be. New Eevee, it's only A because you need it for Eevee cards. Like in general as a card, it's fine. I could move it down to B tier. How in the A tier? I think this could continue to get value as the game goes on, given that this card worked with Incineroar. It's basically an Incineroar deck card. You can use it with Primarina a bit, and maybe a new Incineroar, Decidueye, or Primarina could get value out of it. Right now, I think it's fine. I think I overvalued How a little bit. I'd put it down into our B tier. Nothing in the A tier right now. Taking a look at our S tier, Flareon stays. Sylveon, I still think this Sylveon's a really good card. It didn't end up being competitively meta in any tournaments or anything like that. I think it's probably closer to B, maybe even near A. This is a pretty good card, I think. It's better than Espeon for sure. A lot of damage. Eevee Bag. Eevee Bag is insanely good for Eevee decks. But I'm going to move it to A just because it doesn't have any use outside of anything else. But Eevee Bag, very, very good for Eevee decks, which is cool because it could have utility for a long time, right? There are always going to be, you know, an Umbreon EX or something they'll release in a new set. So this could be relevant for a long time. Eevee EX, I'm going to move it to our A tier as well. It's just like the Eevee Bag. I think A is a very fair place to put both of these cards. They are needed for all Eevee decks, for decks that are using all Eevees, not every deck with Eevees in them, but they're needed for a full Eevee deck, so you can't have it without it, right? And then up to our God tier, which we talked about earlier, Sylveon, I thought was going to be the best thing in the set, and it clearly is the most, you know, impactful card in the entire set. I would love to hear from you in the comments what you think about this set. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Are you somewhere in between? And I'm curious, what do you think the new set's going to be? I don't think this is right, but right now I'm just saying Kyogre Groudon is what we see. We see like a Kyogre Groudon set. That very well could not be the case, but thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. New information very, very soon, it should be. Love you guys. We did it.